Looking for top-level match breakdowns, exclusive interviews with the pros, and the next big League of Legends community? Stack.gg is where you want to be. Apply for membership now. In League of Legends, there are specific moments within each game where the tide of battle turns dramatically. Suddenly, the game goes from even to completely one-sided, or completely one-sided to within reach for the losing team. These big swings, these turning points, are what we at Stacked absolutely live for, so this video series will be all about them. Joining me for this week's episode and taking a look at their loss versus 100 Thieves in the playing quarterfinals is IMT.A's head coach, Jensen Goh. Hey Jensen, how's it going?
I was doing good. Some people thought that, oh, it's Jensen. Which Jensen could it be? TL Jensen? Nope, not that Jensen. This is the less exciting Jensen.
Thank you again for joining us here to break down initially the champion select and then a couple of key highlights. First things first though, champ select. Walk me through it. Why is this Thresh coming through as your first ban? Why do you not want to first pick it yourselves? And why is it a little bit less common than some of the other bans we've been seeing?
I'm not gonna lie here. I don't really recall why we banned Trash. I think it's simply because that Trash is a strong pick that lets them big bully bot lanes. Like Aphido's Trash was a thing at this point of time. We weren't fully prepared to play against it. We didn't have a good read on what Aphido's Trash could really do and what good answers we have. We had like some theoretical answers in this case, but we wanted to eliminate things that we didn't have all that much time to practice against. So we wanted to take that out of the picture. We wanted to first pick Camille, so we took Renekton out of the picture, and Literally was the jungler that they played quite a fair bit of, so we didn't want them to have access to that as well. As for their bans on red side, it's pretty much standard. Talia, Olaf, and Pantheon. These are the three big junglers that I think was pretty consistently banned by most teams on red side.
Yeah, definitely a lot of early game clear power from all of those champs and just really insane ganks. Of course, Talia being paired with Renekton in the top lane for insta-kills. It's like the new age Elise Renekton of old. And also paired with that TF in the mid lane. So yeah, he did a good job of not having to play against that because 100 Thieves banned it themselves. Tell me a little bit more about this TF from Demonte. Of course, it is one of his signature picks. What are your thoughts on it, and what were your potential answers to it, given the fact that Pretty is known for his ability to punish the enemy laner from his time in Europe?
I mean, Twisted Fate is a champion that will do Twisted Fate things, right? You pick him, you're not picking Twisted Fate to win lane, you're not picking Twisted Fate to win team fights. You're gonna very reliably be able to port into a side lane. If you really want to, you can always drop a wave to do it, make TB plays. And that's kind of 100 Thieves playstyle where they play very heavily around the bot lane here. So we have Camille, we've eliminated Renekton, so we are expecting something more volatile on the top side of the map. So we go for Lilia Lucian over here, and the idea behind going for Lucian is that we can have a champion that can punish the Twisted Fate early, have Q pressure, and then be able to translate the mid pressure onto the top side of the map. So that's something that we're aiming to do, where we want to play from mid into top, or play from mid into a possible jungle gap, right? Because we have Lilia here into Graves. If we can go for early invade options, depending on what the draft pans out like, where we can go for an invade into crossing back into our own half of the jungle. We can have a 3-quadrant scenario against the Graves, and then we can try to win the game through a jungle advantage, which is something that we had been practicing quite a fair bit. So I do believe that this was the plan at this point of time.
Yeah, and of course, this was the series that saw the debut of your solo laners actually being able to make it over to North America, with Topoon coming from the Oceanic region and Pretty, of course, as I mentioned, European regional leagues. How long had your team been scrimming together at this point? And also, what are your thoughts on drafting a composition that, as you've just mentioned, could maybe be a little bit more difficult to execute than some of your more standard 5v5, kind of crashes?
I wouldn't say this one was all that difficult to execute. Yes, picking Lucian puts you on the timer of sorts, but we do have the Camille, which is a rather comfortable
Late game
carry
insurance.
target.
Yeah.
Yes. Over here, I think we were considering banning Jax out simply because we had 2 strong auto attackers, and we are planning on picking Leona later on as well. And Jax just eliminates so much of the damage. But back to the point of the amount of scrims that we had before this game, we basically weren't scrimming, because we had to play as stand-ins. In the first week, we played with Revenge and Insanity as the solo laners for the first week of the Lock In tournament. And then after Joey had to fill in for the main team for their LCS scrims, because Destiny, the support for the main team, had not arrived in America yet. So we basically didn't have the chance to scrim as a full team before any of our games, be it previously in the Academy series where we went 2-0 against I don't recall who it was actually, but we took a 2-0 in
Not
Academy and
CLG.
then we had to
I know it
play.
wasn't against CLG because they gave you your first loss, but we'll talk about
It
that
was
another time.
EG Academy give us our first loss. We beat CLG Academy. We
Oh,
lost to
okay.
EG
Yeah.
Academy, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Same week. Literally day after each
Yeah,
other.
we play against 100 Thieves and the 100 Thieves Academy team. So this is like kind of the big brother, the main team. They can taking revenge for them here.
All right. So major takeaways from this draft were that you're pretty comfortable with what you've got, but maybe the Jax is going to be a little bit scary because you're so auto attack dependent. It also takes away a lot of the laning power coming through from Topoon on that Camille, of course, because Counter Strike inside the Hextech Ultimatum, never a fun time. Another thing that I do want to touch on though is that you mentioned how taking away the Thresh was taking away the kill lane from the 100 Thieves spot lane. They've got
Oh, it's
Kai'Sa,
not really a
Alistair.
kill lane. It's a. I mean, Trash doesn't pair all the way with Kai'Sa, but it's more of like I mentioned, Trash affiliates, right?
Yeah,
That was a blind pick bot lane duo that we didn't really have a good read on at that point of time, so we just wanted to eliminate the unknowns at this point. Because if you look at our draft right now, we basically have three lanes of prio, right? Camille can get prio, she takes the 9 in this matchup, and they should be able to push out 3 lanes, and we should be able to translate the 3 lanes of pressure into a jungle lead for ourselves. So like I mentioned earlier, the plan for us was to try to win through getting 3 quadrants of farm over the graves, and we'll see how that pans out later on. So a lot of people look at this composition. Oh wow, they've counterpicked Jackson to Camille. They have got Twisted Fate to help the Jackson the split push. While 100 Thieves is really hard winning in this draft, but they don't think about what's the lane setup's going to be like, and how we can possibly attack the game in the early game.
yeah, definitely do think that you have a little bit of an edge, especially with Pretty on the Lucian here, and of course Jin just being that historic kind of answer to the Kai'Sa's early laning. Now, there were a couple of moments in this game where I thought, okay, they may be in a little bit of trouble. Okay, yeah, so now we're heading into game, Jensen. Anything that really stood out to you in terms of the first couple of seconds, first couple of minutes, especially coming through from, say, the junglers or how the lane priority kind of panned out?
So this is the crux of our game plan, right? We are trying to look for a delayed invade on the top side. We have a stronger 3v3 on the top side of the map. And even if they pull the Alistar, the Leona will be stronger in the skirmish as well. So we are looking to do the double quadrant, the triple quadrant start from the Lilia here. So we're going to look to invade, use the fact that we are mid prio and fight for bot prio as well, and then cross back into one side of the map. That way Grace will only get his blue buff quadrant of farm and his Crocs on top of that. So this would create a winning position for us, because from here our camps will be in a synced position. Graves camps will not be in a synced position. We can continue the contest for Raptors as well. So this is the invade here, and the opponent spot this out. We don't see the ward that spots us, but so far so good for us, because even if they see this, the Graves doesn't really have a strong response back on the bottom side of the map, right? But this is where things go a little bit wrong, because I think they hesitate a little bit in terms of coordinating where this ward here that spots out Graves, when it should be placed. So our bot lane slightly later to the bot lane, so they're not able to fight for priority, and they feel the pressure from Graves being on the bottom side of the map right now. And them not fighting for the push earlier results in a scenario where they get dived later on. So Graves comes in, he gets the red buff, which is still fine, because just look at how awkward things are for the Graves. He does blue buff, he walks an opponent's red buff, and now he has to waste all this time walking back into his own camps, which means that his camps are going to spawn at very awkward timings
Yep,
in
and
comparison to Lilia,
not
right?
only that, but he's used both of his buffs to actually clear out his camps. You get probably no gank at all from this Graves, given the state of the lanes at the moment. And yeah, that blue buff, that red buff, just ticking down while he clears out the Gromp, the Wolves, and then I guess the Raptors or a Crab.
So here, Graves only has got one real option left, which is to try to make a play on the bottom side of the map, right? He can reset, he can go for Crocs, but if he does that, he pretty much doesn't get to play the game from this point.
Sure.
And this is where their coordination and their read of the game state, where they call the TP down from TF, was really well done from 100 Thieves. So they punish our bot lane's inability to push, and they create this scenario. Now we can actually talk about what possible solutions there are to this case, right? Like the first thing is that we mentioned is that our bot lane could have fought for push earlier on, and the second possible scenario is that the moment the ward spots Graves, we should just beeline it straight to the Graves,
Yeah,
so that the
definitely.
Graves doesn't even get to take the red buff.
Who do you think you could have sent to actually intercept the Graves, though, given the fact that your bot lane had no prio and that obviously Lucian does shove
Leona,
TF in? Okay,
Leona.
you'd leave Jin to
Right.
farm under tower and then just send Lucian Leona to collapse. That does make sense. Sounds good. Hindsight is 2020. I like this from Tapoon. Just get out here, even though they committed Huhi to the top side. How does your bot lane punish the fact that you now have a relatively weak Kaisa by herself on the bottom side?
Well, actually, our bot lane's not in a position to punish. In fact, this is actually a mistake from Huhi, because from this position, if he does a roam top, if he goes mid into bot here or straight into bot lane, their bot lane now creates a freeze on us. And then from there, this will now force Lilia to break the pace of a farm to come and relieve the pressure that's happening in the bot lane. This should be 100 T's counterplay to the earlier invade scenario. Once they created the bounce back on the bottom side of the map, if they transition then to a freeze, they can then buy time for Graves to farm, because now Lilia will be forced to walk on the bottom side of the map and skip some camps in order to help out the bot lane. So this was it's more of them not having the opportunity to punish us, rather than us punishing Huhi for the roam. Because our bot lane was able to successfully crash the wave, they couldn't freeze on us, and now Jin is able to continue to farm.
And I think the next couple of minutes actually does get you something back in terms of kills at least and gold swing. But in terms of game state right now, how are you feeling about it?
Oh, it's not the best, but it's definitely fine for us. And we are
Winnable.
seeing the focus of both of these teams, right? Like our team's focus is we are playing for the jungle, and this is where Tapoon he said that he's confident taking on this matchup, which is a skill matchup between Camille and Jax. He's taking quite a decent lead on the top side, right?
Yeah.
So the focus of both teams, 100 Ds into the bot lane and Immortals for the jungle, is showing at this point
Yeah.
of time. But the thing that is a little bit of a player skill difference is Tapoon in the top lane taking this lead over Someday in the early game.
Yeah, definitely was pleasantly surprised to see that, given the fact that Someday was doing a lot against the other top laners in the tournament. But also just consider the fact that, you know, the way your composition plays out, you said it yourself, that you want a 3-man for top side, you want to play around this top side of the map. And yeah, 100 Thieves, while it is kind of suboptimal that they are being shoehorned into playing around the bot lane, it's their comp, it's their style, they're comfortable with it, and they are more than fine just adapting on the fly here. This, however, is where we really see a bit of a fumble from them, and this is where, as we discussed, we probably see you take a lead.
I think they just didn't estimate the amount of skirmishing power that our champions provided at this point of time. This is also one of the key things about the Lilia versus Graves matchup, right? About 7 minutes, the Lilia will be 6, whereas the Graves, because he farms slightly slower, he won't be able to reach that experience breakpoint as well. So Lilia with the lilting lullaby will be able to win fights in the jungle at this point of time. So this is closer, not respecting the spike that Lilia has. We take the contest and we win it.
Sure. And I think it's pretty much par for the course from here on out that you just kind of trade a little bit back and forth in the early, despite having just, you know, clawed back a decent lead for yourselves in terms of lane states, in terms of jungle tempo, and it gets a little bit messy from this point onwards. Oh, yep. Topoon, of course, going Ignite on the Camille. What more can you do? I like this skirmish. This skirmish seems fun, but it doesn't pay off too heavily in your favor in the end.
I wouldn't think it's all that bad, right? I don't
Yeah,
think
no.
it's all
They
that
get
bad.
Herald
It's
off of
just
it,
a,
but it's fine to take because you got gold
three
into
for
the early
two.
game champs.
This was the point where the game really went bad for us. I mean, we could say it's a flip fight, but this is once again our lack of scrims and practice showing, right? Where the coordination's a little bit poor. We're talking about the possibility of doing Rift Herald. There's 2 huge waves crashing to the top side of the map. Camille needs to be answering those waves. So this is actually 100 D's window to be really doing it. But we're so much stronger at this point of time, so we don't really have to be worried about defending the Rift Herald as well. Because if we were just to turn and go for our camps, and if 100 D's were to start the Rift Herald at this point of time, we should be winning the fight. But we choose to start the fight instead. We don't go for all the camps that spawn. We drop the minions on the top side of the map. And what should have been a a rather favorable scenario for us, it ends up actually being pretty bad. So if we were to look at the previous scenario, that fight was actually not necessarily the best 100 years, because while they were chasing Camille, while they were taking the extended fight in the jungle, Jax was losing farm on the top side of the map. So as long as we were able to get back up on the map ourselves and pick up the waves on the top side of the map, clear our own jungle camps, push out mid, and then go for the Harrow. If we were to be more methodical in our approach towards objective, we would have taken a very big lead off the skirmishes that happened previously.
Yeah, so this is the exact play you were talking about. Just yeah, they commit a
Look at
lot.
the top lane wave,
It's
right?
the
Look at the
first tier
top lane
fault, to
wave
be
at this
fair.
point of time.
Yeah, it needs that little bit extra push to actually reach the tower. This
No, it was
was
pushing back into us. So Someday was losing all that farm. He
yeah.
lost like two waves with a farm in this scenario.
Yeah, so following on from that, where you were kind of handshaking back and forth, getting sizable advantages, but then 100 Thieves answering in turn. Tell me more about what happened here, because it just felt like a chain of isolated deaths suddenly happened. Well, not isolated in this case, but just across the map. Loads of deaths across the map in the next couple of minutes or so.
I think once again this is just lack of practice and coordination, right? People are going for their own things, we're communicating things, but people don't understand the shortenings, right? So shortenings are basically the keywords, right? Like you say, like cover me. So at this point of time, we have Pretty in a top lane, he's asking for cover. And
No one's
that's a
there.
little bit ambiguous at this point because you're not entirely sure. So if I'm on the same side of the map as you, am I covering you, or do I have to be in the bush where Graves is now the far of the Graves at this point of time?
Yeah, everyone has different definitions of what these key phrases mean, and you need to play with them to learn what they want from it.
So when I look at this is an area for development for the team where how do we get the team on the same page in terms of the communication, or how do we have better or more specific comms? Same thing as well. This is about habit development, being able to time flashes and the like. If we have a good read and timing on the flashes in general, then we will have a much more accurate play on our ability to push our limits and go for dives like those.
Yeah, following on from this, of course, 100 Thieves do push you towards Drake Point, and I believe you do kind of get forced into contesting a couple of questionable plays around that bottom river in the future. But there was one fight that does come to mind about 21-10 into the game, where you guys actually take a very, very convincing lead off of a pretty interesting overcommitment from 100 Thieves. Unfortunately, after getting that lead and that fight victory, well, Jax happens.
We can break it down. So I think there's learning points in terms of how you set up team fights, right? And how do you control objectives. So this is one of the usual team fighting sins, right? Around neutral objectives that I go through with teams. You either fight, you either play for the turn, or you play to finish and run. So our position here is kind of split. So if we were to pause it at the point where the Grave starts to walk into the river, or if we're going to be finishing the Drake, right? Because if we're going to be playing to finish the Drake, then the idea is that we would now be kiting down to the right and then exiting via the bot lane. Then in that case, the position of Joey on the Leona, he wouldn't be walking to contest the dot bush. He'll be walking the long way around to loop around to cover the team's exit path in this case.
Yeah.
So we weren't coordinated whether we were playing to run or we were playing to turn. So that ended up being the problem because our position was to run, but we played for the turn. So it ended up in setting up for a opportunity for Jax to carry in the team fight.
Yeah, and I guess from here on out, it's just a couple more lost team fights after lost team fights. They're close, but yeah, and of course, longer this kind of handshake scenario goes in where you're not really losing too much, but you're also not winning enough. It's just time for Jin and Lucian to start falling off in terms of relevance.
Those are the big review points that we have for this game. And from here, 100 Thieves, they're on the driver's seat.
Yeah.
We try some cheeses to get back on the map, but it's a difficult ask to try to convert a win from this position.
Give me a couple of major takeaways, Jensen.
Defending the bot lane. So what bot lane's response should be in terms of why it's important for them to continue to maintain the push in the bot lane so that they don't get dived in a scenario. How do we defend the Graves response in the red buff? That's the early game takeaway. And the Rift Herald scenario was another takeaway as well, right? Where if we have camps up, we are still busy answering waves, then we shouldn't rush to start the neutral objective. We should only start neutral objectives on our timing, rather than elect to rather than get caught up in the pace of the game and feel like we need to rush to make something happen. Because if we just cleared our camps at a point of time, we just answered the top lane wave, we would have been in a good position.
Yeah.
And I think as well in terms of like coordinating team fights, always be clear: are you playing to fight or are you playing to turn? Never play to fight and finish. Sorry, never play to turn and run at the same time.
All right. That is pretty much it. Yeah, excellent. After, this showing and after how this tournament went for you and how actually Academy is going for you right now, what are your hopes for the rest of the split?
Well, I mean, results wise, the nature of Academy is that yes, we all do hope to win,
Yeah.
but the focus is always on developing players, helping them overcome their limitations, right? So this is a slight taster of where we might possibly be weak at. We're definitely going to expand into different styles of play as well. Definitely as the meta changes with the patches, and that's going to be the goals for the rest of the split at least for us.
I'm also very sorry, but I think my boss really wants me to ask this question. How do you think the main IMT team will do now that you've
I think they'll do
gauged
pretty
the
well.
level of the competition? Can you give us any insight as to how your scrims are going against them? Are you guys doing well against them, or?
I definitely think the main Immortals team is definitely will be a team that people sleep on.
Yeah,
They
100%.
understand with the coaching that Gilhoto provides. They understand how to play the modern game of League of Legends pretty well, and I think they're pretty solid in lane. So I think they should be able to give most of the top teams a run for their money, and against the teams that are a little bit more flawed, be it in the laning departments or if they have key fatal flaws in their macro, they should be able to punish them accordingly. I wouldn't be too surprised if we break into the upper parts of the LCS, even within the first half of the year for the main
Okay,
team.
fantastic. That's, yeah, lofty aspirations, but still definitely good to have. All right, thank you, Jensen, for joining us. Anything you want to sign off with?
Nothing in particular.
All right, best luck with the rest of the split. Thanks, Jensen.